In this section, we will take a look at how we can further enhance our application by adding some additional features. So we will start by looking at how we can lazy load modules in our application so that we are only loading the part of our application that we need to interact with. So currently we are inside our editor, and here we will see how we can convert our headlines component or page to lazy loading module. So let's start by looking at app routing module.ts, and here we can see when we hit that headlines path, it is loading that component. But currently we are loading all our components at once when we load our application, so we can fix that. So let's see how we can do it for the headlines component. So we can start by opening our integrated terminal here, and let's click new terminal. And first we have to create a new module for the headlines. So we can do ng generate module, and then I want to generate module called headlines inside of headlines folder, and let's run it first with dry run. Create our headlines module inside of the headlines folder automatically, so we don't need to add the headlines folder path by ourselves. So let's clear the terminal and let's run it without the folder name, and we can see this will create a folder and then the module inside of it. So if we clear the terminal again and then run the command without a dry run, so this will create the module for us. So here we can see it has created a module inside of the headlines folder. Now let's close the terminal here, and the next step is, so instead of component we have to use load children now. So if we want to lazily load it, so we will use load children, and here we have to specify the path. So we need the module path, so we will do /headlines/headlines.module, and then we have to add hash and then the class name for the module. So if we open headlines module.ts, so we have to use this class name. So we can copy that and then we can paste it here. Alright. Now we can head over to headlines.module.ts, and here we have to specify the module specific routes. So we can create a constant here, constant called routes, which can be of type router, and here we will add an array, and again we have to add path. So here we will add empty route or empty path because we have already defined the path here for the headlines. So for the root component we want to use the headline component, so we will say headlines component, and to use this we also have to add the headlines component inside of the declarations array. And for the routing to work we have to add the router module, and then we can use the for child because this is not our root module, and here we can add our constant of routes. So here we are getting an error, argument of type router is not assignable to the parameter of type route. So I think we are getting that error because of that router. Actually this should be routes. Alright, and we can remove this router. So now we can save it. And now if we go back to our editor and we click on headlines, so we are not navigating to it, we might have some error. So let's open the developer console, and here we can see we are getting an error. Headlines component is part of the declaration of two modules. So I think I know the error. So inside of our editor we can go back to app.module.ts. So we no longer need headlines component here inside of the declarations array in the app.module.ts, so we can remove it. And one last thing, we have to import material module inside of our headlines module. So we can add material module here also. So now we can save it. And now if we take a look at inside of our browser and we click on headlines, we are successfully loading all our data again, and now we are loading it lazily. To prove the point, we can resize the window, and then we can click on our network tab, and here we can click on home, and let's refresh the page once again. And now if we click on headlines, you can see we will be getting a new bundle, and this headlines module.js. So this is only being loaded when we click on that headlines navigation item. So that means we are loading our headlines page lazily. So now we can close the developer console, and let's see how we can convert our other pages to lazy loading modules. So inside, see how we can convert our sources page to lazy loading module. So we can open our terminal here, and then we can generate a module called sources, and then we can close the terminal here. And then if we go to our app routing module.ts, we can change this component to our load children, and here we can add sources.module, and then we can add sources module. Alright, and we can comment this component. And similarly, we can go to app module.ts, and we no longer need this sources component inside of the declarations array, and then we can remove it here also. And now we can go to sources module.ts, and here we can create a constant for the routes that will be of type routes, and here we can define our route for the sources page, and let's add a path, so that will be empty, and the component we are going to be using is sources component. Alright, and here we can add router module dot for child, and then we can specify our routes, and at last we have to add material module. I think that's all we need to do. So if we go back to our browser and then we click on sources, so we are not being redirected. That means we have some error. So let's open the developer console, and let's see the error. So we are saying cannot find sources module. So we have misspelled the module, so let's fix it. So we can go to app routing module.ts, and here we can change this to module. This should fix the error. Also, if we go to sources module.ts, we have to add sources component inside of our declarations array. So now this should work. So now inside of our browser, if we click on sources, we can see we are getting sources works. And similarly, let's convert our favorites page to the lazy loading module. So inside of our editor, we can start by opening the terminal, and then we can generate a module called favorites as the name specified here. So we can add favorites, and now we can close the terminal. And the next step is we can add our routing here in the app routing module.ts. So for the favorites path, we can add the load children property, and here we can add the path for our favorites module, and then we have to add favorites module, and now we can comment this component, and now we can open app.module.ts, and here we can remove favorites component, and we can also remove the import here, and then we can open favorites.module.ts, and here we have to add the routes that will be of type routes, and let's define an array here. For the path, we will use that empty string, and the component that we want to use is favorites component, and make sure to add this import statement. So we first have to add it to the declarations array, and for the imports we can add our router module, then we can use the for child method here and let's add the routes as a parameter, and at last we have to add material module. So now if we go back to our browser and then we click on favorites, we can see we are getting favorites works.